David Duchovny.
Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight, and thanks to David for coming and talking about his book. The book has been getting great reviews. I'm not sure how many of you have seen it yet or read it yet. I recommend it highly. I read it. It was reviewed today in, among other places, the Washington Post, which said, interestingly enough, this must be the only book that begins with quotes from Yeats and Ed Koch. Now, David, you dedicate this book to your mother. You point out that you took one of your first subway rides with her, though you hardly ever got to where you were going. You point out, though, that the destination wasn't as important as the ride. What did you mean by that?
I'm just trying to be nice. I actually would have liked to have gotten where I meant to go. The specific ride that I'm talking about is we grew up down in this neighborhood. My mother is from Scotland and is not conversant with the subway so well. And we were trying to get to the Museum of Natural History, which is where a lot of little boys like to go. I was obsessed with dinosaurs when I was a young kid. So we got on some train and got onto other trains and that hooked up with many other trains, and all of a sudden we were above ground, which neither of us had ever been in a subway, because the definition of a subway is that it's underground to us. And then we had the doors opened and we were in Jamaica. Of course, I saw the word Jamaica on a sign and I was like, oh shit.
Not even the right borough.
Yeah. Just looking for the beach. But what I was saying was, in the sense of, say, William Blake, who says if the fool would persist in his folly, he would become wise. The idea of it's just getting off your ass and trying to take the journey. It doesn't matter if you get to the right place, you're going to get to some place. And usually the mistakes you make along the way are going to be the most significant for you.
One of the things David says in his interview with Maureen Dowd the other day in the Times is that he doesn't want people to like this book and say it's pretty good for an actor.
No, I do. I do.
But he does have great credentials as a writer as well. He's written 2 books. They've gotten good reviews. He went to Princeton. He went to Yale, majored in English literature. You wrote or started a doctoral thesis about something I can barely pronounce.
Yeah.
I don't think agents are salivating over it to make a movie.
Oh.
But maybe wrong. But
It's only been 40 years. I mean, it's going to happen.
But this book, Miss Subways, was inspired by a play you saw at Yale as a graduate student ages ago. A sort of fantasy, a Celtic fantasy, that probably, if anyone here saw, they wouldn't quite understand. How did it get transformed decades later into a book about Miss Subways? How many people here know what Miss Subways is?
The actual competition of Miss Subways.
Right, the competition that used to be those placards on the subway system.
Yeah, yeah. I believe this woman is actually the first Miss Subways. And I didn't put her on the cover because she was the first. I saw her when I was researching, and she just jumped out at me as being innocent yet mysterious. What was the question?
It's a good way of avoiding it. How do you make the leap from seeing the play at Yale, which you said...
Well, it was a very slow leap. I saw the play in 1985.
Yeah, it wasn't a leap, actually.
Yeah, it was a crawl.
Right.
It was a fall, even.
But you know, the idea of percolating in your mind, and then when you finally sat down and decided to write it, how did it evolve from a fantasy Irish play into the New York subway?
Well, what had struck me when I saw the play, and in the play, the Irish king Cuchulainn has killed his son in battle by mistake because he's such a crazy warrior, kills everything around him. He ends up killing his son, and now he's out in the ocean fighting the waves because he's mortified that he's killed his own son. He's going to drown fighting the deathless sea, as Yeats calls it. And the seed, the demon comes to Cuchulain's wife, Emer, and says basically he's going to die, but you can save him if you renounce your fantasy of having an old age with him. You know, he's out running with these concubines, he's a youngish man, and she has a hope that in his old age he'll come back to her. And so she has to renounce this, this fantasy, or this hope, and to save him. And she does that, and that just stayed with me forever. I saw it in 1985, and I just thought it was very, if not romantic, then at least moving in some way. And then just always stayed with me. I always remembered it, and I don't know. I wanted to modernize it in a way, and I had trouble doing that, but eventually I was able to. And the subway just came into mind just mythologically as just being, you know, underground, and was writing about a woman whose power was underground and not yet above ground, and it just all kind of made sense. And then those trains of thought that I was subjected to when I would ride the subway, which were quotes from literature and philosophy, and I just thought that was a kind of an oracle and an easy way into some of the philosophical ideas that I was dealing with in the book.
Those trains of thoughts were sort of in between the poetry in motion quotes
Poetry in
that
motion.
you often see on the subway. That Maureen Dowd story the other day said that Emer, who is the heroine of this story, actually has a lot of the same traits that you do. The eyes reflect, and I'm quoting her, some charismatic, universal, lighthearted melancholy, like she saw things at a distance, a gently ironic remove. She's a reader, it defined her. She does not like to kill anything. Semi-strict, non-dogmatic, occasionally vegetarian. She makes an exception for mosquitoes and good sushi. And she's a school teacher like your mother and your sister. Is that a fairly accurate comparison?
I mean, yeah, I suppose. I mean, that's she thinks that, yeah. So, but those are my words describing that character. Those are not my words to describe myself.
How would you describe yourself?
I don't know. I try not to as often as possible.
One of the things that someone used to describe you is that you are comfortable being uncomfortable. What do you think that means?
I don't know, but it makes me uncomfortable.
So you must be feeling comfortable.
I don't know what that means. Who said that?
The director of Aquarius.
Oh, really?
That may say a lot right there.
That's good.
In the acknowledgments, you thank your teachers at Collegiate for teaching you how to write.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be taught how to write?
I certainly, I think so. Yeah, and Collegiate really was a writing school. I mean, writing was the foundation of all the liberal arts subjects in the school. You had to be a good writer. You had to learn how to write. And I remember when I was at Yale, I had this professor named Michael Cook, who would talk about how he couldn't even think without a pencil in his hand. You know, that writing was thinking to him. And I think that it's strange to me now that I actually write, and I can't type fast. I failed that course. So I type like this, but I write like this, which is odd to me because I've always written, you know, I've always written with a pen or a pencil, but now that's how I write.
On a computer? Or?
On a computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you like writing, acting, singing? Which? I mean, you're sort of a Renaissance man in that sense.
Well, I like it all. I just think that different things occur to me to be expressed different ways. Acting is my business. I've been doing that for a long time. I enjoy doing it now because I feel like I've served an apprenticeship for 30 years now, and I know what I'm doing. So I'm not tired of it. I'm actually interested in it maybe more than ever. Writing to me is something I've always done, in private anyway, and the music is fairly new. So they all have different kind of attractions for me.
I interviewed Danny Aiello one time when he said that acting was an escape for him because he always was able to escape into other characters. And I have to say, I find writing something, and particularly journalism, as something of an escape to me, because I am always kind of an outsider looking at other people, other events. Do you find that for yourself too, in either of those two things? And if so, what are you escaping from?
I think that, excuse me, I think that any time that I can focus, anytime that I can intensely focus for any length of time, whether it's an hour, 5 hours writing, or if it's the duration of a part that I'm acting, or writing music or performing music, then to me that's the escape. Anytime you can kind of focus yourself on an outside object or project, then that's the vacation. That's why I don't really have hobbies, because I really do feel like what I'm able to do is, as I escape from my mind in these things, even if I'm using my mind, I find it very invigorating to be able to do these things. I don't get tired doing that.
Do you write differently as an actor? When the Times reviewed Bucky fucking Dent.
Thank you.
Yes. A little plug. Joe Salvatore in the Times wrote, a fiction teacher once told us that we should know every detail about the characters we create, down to the kind of bath towel they prefer, even if the towel never appears in the story. That advice smacked of Stanislavski's method. And the reviewer said, I wondered a bit enviously if actors who tried their hand at writing fiction would invent characters with greater depth than mere scribblers. Do they? I mean, do you bring another level of depth to writing?
No, I don't think so. I think in terms of dialogue, I enjoy writing the dialogue in my books a lot, because I think I know what good dialogue sounds like, and that comes from years of speaking both good and bad dialogue. so it's both.
But that dialogue is primarily dialogue that other people have written for you.
Oh yeah.
Good and bad.
Yeah. I'm not going to name any names, but sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not as good. But to be able to, not only to be able to write the kind of dialogue that I wouldn't mind speaking as an actor, but also you get to luxuriate in the process of the book with the dialogue. Because if I had to make this into a movie, I'd have to cut a lot of dialogue. I'd let the characters speak more. You can let the characters speak more in a book than you would in a screenplay, and that's fun for me to just be able to let that all hang out. But in terms of like being an actor writing, I don't like any kind of review that knows anything about me. I think you should review the book, you shouldn't review the author. So I kind of get pissed off when I hear people review me as an actor or a writer trying to make music, whatever. Who the fuck cares? It's like, it is what it is. No reviewers here. Okay.
Obviously not. Some writers and reviewers don't read their reviews, do you?
Well, I just gave myself away, didn't I?
Yeah, I guess. Do you ever learn anything from them?
Do you ever learn?
Do you sometimes a reviewer write and say, I wish I'd done it that way?
Well, you would hope that that's the function of criticism. Some kind of an
Good criticism.
Well, actual criticism, which I don't see very much of. I see reviews of people, and I see reviews trying to draw a line from the work to the person, as if that was the most interesting thing to be found. Unfortunately, it's probably, to me, the least interesting thing to be found is anything about me in that book, or in any other book. To me, it's, I would love it if they just gave the book Well, it's a double-edged sword, because obviously I'm speaking out both sides of my mouth, because I get to use my celebrity to sell books.
And you were interested.
And without my name on it, I'd probably sell fewer books, and I'd maybe get better reviews. So I don't know. I don't really know.
So which is more important to you? Better reviews or more sales?
I'd rather more people read it. Yeah, so hopefully I don't have to choose, but apparently I do. So I think I write these things. I do these things not to disappear into a vacuum. I'd like them to be read.
That's fair. You said the hardest thing about writing a novel in the age of Trump is that we're all characters in a Beckett play directed by Sartre.
No, I didn't say that. Maureen
Maureen
took something that I'd written and stuck it in there.
Okay.
I said that it's just the fact of Trump makes it hard, because everybody's talking about Trump all the time, and supposedly to be an adult is to speak of politics now, which to me is an oxymoron. But that's all anybody talks about is politics, and they talk about Trump. So it's kind of dwarfed every kind of other enterprise that an artist can do. And everything is seen through that lens. You know, instead of the lens of maybe drawing it back to the author, now everything is seen through the lens of our particular historical moment at the present time. And that's not how real art is judged. That's crap. That'll pass. This will all pass. Then we'll see what's left standing.
There's very little politics in the book.
Well, I do make fun of certain people.
You do make fun of certain people.
I couldn't help myself.
A former mayor.
Oh,
That's true.
America's mayor.
When you wrote this book, what did you want people to walk away with?
You mean Donald Trump's lawyer?
Yes, that him too. When you wrote,
It's impossible. It's impossible not to talk about it. Yeah, for me anyway.
When you wrote Miss Subways, what did you want people to walk away with when they finished it?
I don't really know. I mean, I'm just trying to tell an engaging story. I wanted to tell a story about a person, in this case a woman, who goes from being like the second lead in her own life story to being the lead in her life story. Who goes from being somebody who helps a man write a work of nonfiction to somebody who writes her own work of fiction. And I wanted to make the case that all three of those versions that you get in this book are possibilities and might even be happening all at the same time on some psychic level, and that we do have the power to choose, and because choice is the wager that the demon brings to the woman. So it's really about making choices and who controls the narrative of your life.
You've got a great ear for dialogue, but why do you think you were so able to write from different points of view, including a woman's point of view? Other than the fact you have a sister.
Yeah. My mother didn't come tonight, unfortunately. Yeah. I think I said this in the discussion with Maureen that was recorded. I think it's about empathy, you know, and I think that's what we're, as an artist, what you are trying to do is to put your mind or your heart or your soul into something else and figure out what makes that tick, or whatever it is, and whether that's a man or a woman or a race or religion or a dog or a cat or a refrigerator. You know, you've got to get out of yourself and get into that thing. And whether or not I do a good job of it, that's up to other people to decide. But that's what I'm trying to do, and that's. I think we live in a time when people are told that they're only to write or act or do what they are or what they know. And I think that's dangerous, because I think that at the heart of any kind of artistic endeavor is actually empathy, and that's always a good thing.
So does that mean we should be much more flexible in terms of a black being able to play a white role, or
Well, I
vice
don't know.
versa?
I don't know. I hesitate to legislate, but I do know that that if I set out to write a woman, that's all I've done. I've just tried to get inside this character's head and write this as a woman. I'm not making a general statement that I write better than a woman or I write worse than a woman as a woman. I'm just doing what I can.
And want to be judged on that, on what you write.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, again, this would be an interesting thing to review the book and forget about my name, not know that it's a man or a woman. That would be interesting as well. Who wrote it?
Why do you write so many things, or two of the three books at least, involve the surreal?
I don't know. Maybe because I'm lazy and I don't want to research things that really happened.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But seriously.
I was being serious. I don't know.
Is it easier just to make things up?
No.
I would find it harder. I would find fiction much harder than nonfiction.
Yeah.
But
I guess what I do is with the last two books, what I've done is I've started with a historical event. In Bucky, I started with the game where the Yankees beat the Sox in the one-game playoff, and then I make up the rest or a lot of it from there. But I use it as an underpinning, and in this, I guess that's what I'm using the Miss Subway's competition in a way, and New York itself as a realistic underpinning for just a story I'm trying to tell or retell.
what do you think the impact of the books is? I mean, you quoted, I think in the Bucky book, you quoted Coleridge, "Hast thou a charm to stay the morning star?" You said the truest saddest line in literature, can you, who call yourself a writer, find the words that will have an actual influence on the real and natural world? Do words have an influence on the world? Have you written words that have an influence on the world, or spoken words that have an influence on the world?
Well, I remember writing a note to my son for him to get some milk, and he did it.
And that's about as far as it went?
That's the biggest claim I can make. I don't know. I mean, with certain words are spoken by certain people in certain situations, they can have a lot of power. Words in a book, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, they've affected me. I mean, I'm quoting them. They had power over me. They continue to exercise power over me.
One of the great things about the book is that you take those trains of thought, which we've seen on the subway. Are those actually from the trains of thought? Or
No, I made those up. Those are just stuff that I liked. I don't think they're going to put a paragraph of Nietzsche on the subway.
Right, they were long. They were wonderful quotes that Emer manages to extrapolate from and uses as a starting point to take off and think, where she goes.
Actually, I think maybe the Kafka, the first one, I might have seen. That might have been what caught my eye about the whole thing in the first place.